know that the potential is so big. And so by me showing up at that time and watching what happens where they drop away this story and then they start living into their greatest purpose, I'm actually able to be a participant in what they're about to do for the world.
Yeah.
And that's that leverage, that multiplier effect that I think changes the dynamic of who we are as a human.
This is Henry Washington, and you're listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below. All right. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Average Joe Finances podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavaggioni, and today's guest is Leisa Peterson. And I want to let you all know we are recording live right now from the podcast stage at RubeCon 23. This whole setup was provided by Podcast Abundance, and we cannot be more grateful for them being amazing hosts to us. So with that being said, Leisa, I'd like to welcome you to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Mike. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. So this has been a long time coming because I've wanted to speak to you ever since RubeCon last year, and I didn't get a chance to actually sit down and have a chat with you. We've talked a couple times on some of the pre-meetups to RubeCon, but we haven't actually had to sit down and have a chat yet. So I'm really excited that our actual first sit-down chat is on my podcast. So this is fantastic. So there's a couple different things I'd like to talk to you about. One of them is your book, also the Mindful Millionaire, right? That's your book. And then also the Wealth Clinic that you started up. And we can get into those, but I also want to talk to you a little bit about what you call true freedom. And just doing some research and checking out your background and everything, I think we have a very similar definition to what that true freedom is. Before we get into any of that, my listeners need to know a little bit about you. So if you could share a little bit about yourself, share your story, go as deep into it as you'd like, or share as little as you'd like, that's okay. But we want to know, who is Leisa Peterson?
Awesome. I love sharing that kind of thing. I like to talk about the fact that I am someone who came from pretty tough circumstances. And even though my life is pretty dang charmed now, it wasn't just going to obviously happen that way. And what I mean by that is when I was born, my parents were young. My dad had just gotten out of jail, actually, right after I was born. And the home that I grew up in was really stressful. My parents didn't know what they were doing, and you got to figure this out for yourself. And one of the things that really marked my childhood is my parents weren't horrible with money, but they were really irresponsible with money. And so it started me out early in life with an extreme scarcity mindset, and it was really unstable. I was always afraid that we were going to lose our car because we did, or lose our house because we did. It was just something that marked my childhood, and it really would later on define the things that I decided were important in life. And namely, I thought probably around once I learned about money at age 8, I started making money. I was like, oh, if you have a lot of money, then you don't have to suffer like my parents do. So
Right.
I'm going to figure out how to make a lot of money, and and that's all that matters. Then I'll be happy.
That'll solve everything.
100%. Yep. Yep. And interesting enough, my parents were really creative. And when I got to the opportunity to be the first to go to college, I decided that I wanted to do something really creative. And so I studied design and textiles in college. And I got this really cool job out of college that was designing clothes for this famous designer. And 1 year in, I'm making minimum wage. I'm making less than when I had been in college as a cocktail waitress or a bartender. I was like, oh, the creative life is not going to take me where I want to go with the
Right.
money. I went back to school, got my MBA, and began a career in finance. And so this is going back almost 30 years now that I started that. And thankfully, I learned about money. I used that to help me become very successful with money. But the sad thing is, in 1999, my dad was brutally murdered by his best friend or his ex-girlfriend's friend. And it changed everything. It caused me to question these assumptions that I had made about what brings happiness. I was like, if you can have this happen to you. And I realized that I wasn't really happy, no matter the fact that I was married to my college sweetheart, that I had a beautiful, healthy baby. I was like, I am actually a wreck and I need to get to the bottom of what's going on. And over the course of this past 23 years, I came to realize that scarcity mindset that I had been exposed to really early in life could not control my life. And ultimately, that led me to writing the book, The Mindful Millionaire, of helping myself and other people figure out how to move from scarcity into abundant thinking. And it's one thing if you were born in a really comfortable circumstance where you just didn't worry about money, that might not be the book for you. But if or you identify with what it means to be in this mindset of scarcity, and we can talk more about that, then the book is for you because it helps you question your assumptions that you saw early in life to create a life of abundance. And coming to today, interesting enough, I'm in this place of semi-retirement because we have enough money to last us for the rest of our lives. We can make all the choices that we want. We have created this incredible freedom, but I will say that the money was just a small part of it. It was about the mindset that it took for me to feel so abundant in the life that I live today.
Yeah. Lisa, I really appreciate the transparency and everything about your background and what you shared with me. It brings me back a little bit to even my own childhood, similar circumstances. So I was the only one of my siblings not born in New York. I was born in Florida because my parents at the time were fugitives. So they were staying away from New York until later on when they went back. And my younger sister was actually born in prison. Not in prison. They took my
Yes.
mom out and to the hospital, and then she went back into incarceration after that. Yes, and I've been through a lot of similar things in my childhood that caused this scarcity mindset with me as well. And when I look back at that and I hear what you share in your story, I resonate so much with that that it's sickening. And so some of the things I was writing down that you were talking about is how your parents were irresponsible with their finances, with money. And I too had that similar experience. So it's at times we had an abundance of money, just so much, but it would just get blown because my dad just didn't know how to handle his finances. So when we had a lot of money, things were good. When we didn't, we were worried about whether or not the electricity would stay on. Right. So it was like this give and take of just this back and forth. And as a child, it really affects how you think. And I believe that's what also gave me that scarcity mindset as well. And then fast forward to now, I've changed everything about how I look at money. It's the whole mindset piece, like you talked about. Money's just a tool, right? It's a tool to help you get your freedom. But that mindset that you talked about is so important. And I'd like to get into that because I'm pretty sure your book being named The Mindful Millionaire, which I've not read it yet, which I want to now, especially after hearing what you described about it. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that book is one of those things that will help you with your mindset on that journey in your finances. And I'm pretty sure that's also why you started the Wealth Clinic as well, to help individuals change that scarcity mindset and get more into an abundance mindset. And there's so much more than money to get there. So if we could go into that a little bit, what is it do you think is one of the biggest tools besides money that can help affect how you change your mindset to an abundance mindset?
Yeah. If you've struggled with money, there is this perception that if you have more money, it's going to solve all your problems. And
Right.
what wealthy people will tell you, wise wealthy people will say that you could have all the money in the world and be completely stressed out all the time, worried about losing it or worried about people stealing from you. It just goes on and on.
Right.
And so, what I learned in my journey after my dad was killed is I turned to actually meditation because
Mm,
I did not have the ability at the time to be a witness to my feelings, a witness to what was happening. I was always inside of the story. I was always spinning around trying to figure out who do I blame? Who do I judge? How have I been taken advantage of? Like, victim. That's the life that I came from. And so, those sorts of things, one way we can describe it is this inner critic that becomes the voice of all the bad things that have happened to you in the past.
It's
It
part of that
follows you
victim mentality, right?
100%.
Yeah, okay.
So you have to be able to notice, oh, I'm upset right now. Oh, I'm stressed out right now. Because if you don't have awareness in the present moment of what's going on, you're going to keep repeating the pattern over and over again. So, mindfulness to me, and why it's called the Mindful Millionaire, was about we need to pause. We need to be able to separate ourselves from this programming, from this paradigm that we have found ourselves in this life. We need to separate from it, realize that is a story that we have been given for a really long time, but it doesn't mean that we have to believe it. And when we start to realize that when we change our thoughts, that we identify them and we start to say, maybe that's not healthy. Maybe my life is all oriented to preventing losses. Like, how am I not going to lose here? Which is a scarcity mindset.
Right.
We have to retrain. So we know we've got the problem. We see that where we get stuck. And now we start to see what would it look like if I were to play to win, right? What would it look like if I saw this as an investment of my time, of my money? Even if it doesn't lead to the success that I want, what if just that experience of failure and mistakes are some of the most valuable things that I have in life? All of a sudden, we're like, dang, my mistakes are worth a lot. That's
Yeah.
abundant
It's
mindset.
investing in yourself, right? It's taking those mistakes, those experiences that you've had, not only learning from them, but turning it into something better, right? By taking those experiences. Yes, of course, you learn from them, right? But as you learn from them, you grow. And growth is probably one of the biggest things that you can have in your life that causes this big change to your mindset. One of the things I wrote down as you were talking about is you go from this victim mentality and you said, take a pause from that, right? And remove yourself or separate yourself from that mindset. Now, what would you say? I know you said you started meditating, but what are some other ways that you can find to separate yourself from that mindset? For me, I like to journal. I'm not as active in journaling as I should be. I used to do it every day. Full disclosure, I'm not doing it every day. And I used to meditate all the time too. And full disclosure, I am not meditating all the time anymore. My wife tells me like every day, like, hey, come do yoga with me, come meditate. And I'm like, after I send out this email or after I get this done. So I find myself struggling with this battle of taking care of myself because that's the way I look at it. So, what are some ways that I can refocus myself? Now, this is personal for me,
Right.
right? It's my podcast. I could be selfish like that.
Exactly.
But what are some ways that I can refocus that self care to invest more in myself instead of just worrying about my businesses all the time?
Yeah. One of the things I'm going to be talking about here at the conference tomorrow is about becoming unshakable, someone who
Mm,
can't be shaken, right? Can't be destroyed, can't be altered, can't be stopped. And what have realized is it's different for each of us. But the thing that comes to mind here in that question is knowing the why behind what we do, like identifying the why. And what does that mean? If we don't know the why, we're not going to figure out the how. And so let's say you decided that your why was, I want to be like the best parent to my children ever. That's a really deep core value, especially for you and I, because we didn't come from the perfect role models. And
right.
so becoming a great parent is the why underneath all of it. I want to set them up for success. I want to really give them the support that they want. That begins like a deep understanding of the love and compassion we have for our children becomes the why. And when we have the why, all of a sudden the how becomes very clear. Nietzsche says, he who has a why can bear almost any how. And so the how then becomes I need to sit on that cushion every day, because if I'm not doing that, I'm not going to be at my best on a daily basis when stress does happen in the family or
Right.
things go not according to plan. It starts to give us an ability to make better decisions about the choices that are coming at us constantly. Like, this makes sense, this doesn't. sometimes things make a lot of sense financially, but they're going to suck you dry and they're going to
Right.
take away from the time that you have for your family. No amount of money in the world is worth that. And so when we get really clear on aligning our values and our priorities, which is what the why is all about, we get into the how am I going to do that question. And I think that's really healthy.
Yeah, I think that's one of those questions I need to re-ask myself. I always focus on what my why is for real estate investing, what my why is for my businesses. And for me, it's to build generational wealth for my family and to, make sure that my children don't grow up with the same mindset that I grew up with and that they don't have to have this scarcity mindset. And I think sometimes in focusing on that, I lose sight on the first part of my why, my family, right? So I think sometimes I just need to take a step back, reevaluate my why, right? And then that'll help give me the tools for my how to get there. So yeah, I know that there's always work to be done, right? And I know I need to always continue working on myself, but I really appreciate you sharing that with me. And again, it was a selfish question for me, but that's what this is all about. And I know that this is going to provide a lot of value to my listeners as well. So that's why I asked these questions. So fantastic. Now, there's something else that you mentioned too that earlier that I wrote down, and I like this because I think I identify in this same area as well, and that's being semi-retired. So I retired from the Navy and I've been working from home the past 6, 7 months now. And I find myself very like bored sometimes. And I even started looking at getting another job, but I just want to do something else. And I miss some of the things I did while I was in the military. Not so much that I miss the military, but I miss some of the camaraderie of having a mission that's so much bigger than myself. So that's where I'm finding myself there in my semi-retirement. But can you explain to me what that is for you? What is being semi-retired?
First and foremost, it's about living in the present moment and having the freedom to choose where my mind is going.
Awesome.
And recently, I had spent a lot of time when the book came out in 2020. I realized that like the book tour was canceled. It was we're in the side of the pandemic. A lot of things changed really quickly for me. And I thought, okay, you have this book, you have this platform. How can you help people? And I could see that a lot of business owners really needed to change their mindset, especially going through the pandemic. And
Right.
I started teaching about money to business owners. And I built that business up to really successful over this time. And last fall, I realized that the time it was taking for me to run that business wasn't actually time, it wasn't presenting time freedom. And even though I was making a big impact in other people's lives, it was taking away from mine. And when money isn't the reason that you're doing something, you've got to be really careful about how you choose to spend your time. And I said, you
Yeah,
know what?
it comes back to that why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and my why was changing because we had hit a whole new level with our investing, and it was changing my perspective. My husband was facing some health challenges. My son's getting ready to graduate from high school. We're gonna be empty nesters after 26 years of having children in the home. And I was like, "Okay, wait a minute. What do you want now?" And I was like, in order to go wherever I'm supposed to go next, which I don't have to know, I need to let go of what I've got right now, no matter what that means to my pride and my reputation. Like I had to let go of things that I've been working on for 10 years. I've built this business up. And I was like, what if I just let it go? What if I walked away, keep aspects of it, but said, I think there's something else for me, but I don't have to know what that is. But if I don't let this go, I'm not going to have space to allow that next thing to come in. And the next thing is going to be a reflection of who I've become, not who I was 9 years ago, but who I am today. And so sometimes I kind of burn it down or let it go or give up. I think you have to be really courageous to do that. Like I'm inside of it going, wow, this hasn't been easy. But to me, that's the ultimate freedom that you could actually let go of things that you worked really hard to build and say, maybe there's a better option. Maybe there's a way that my skills can help more people in the world, but I don't know it until I try it with nothing going on.
Awesome. Yeah, it's fantastic. For me, the way I look at it right now is if I was to go take another job, right? I what I like about where I'm at in my semi-retirement is that if I don't like it, I could just walk away because I'm at the point where my passive income pays for all my expenses already anyway. I want to do something more than just myself. And now what I do here with Average Joe Finances too, right, makes an impact and it helps so many people, which is great. And that too is something way bigger than myself, right? The coaching that I do, right? Helping people in real estate, even as a real estate agent, the clients that I service and take care of. That's what I enjoy so much about all of those. It's about that service to others. I, for me, I feel I've been able to take so much from other people that have given me so much. And I'm at a point where I want to give back, right?
Mhm.
And this podcast is one way that I can give back and give to others and help them get to the point where they can seek out their own financial freedom and follow their own path. Because we all have a different path in life. And you and I come from a similar one, which is awesome. So we can really connect when it comes to this. But everyone else has their own path. There are people that have grown up in families that were very good with finances, but because of that, they don't really know the struggle and they wind up making poor decisions later on. So everybody else has their own journey, right? And they have to focus on their own goals and their own why. So I think that's super important for us to discuss that as well, because I don't think the client base for you is just the folks that grew up with a scarcity mindset, because I believe even people that have grown up in wealthy families can still use a lot of these same tools to be more effective and grow their wealth. And that's one of the things that we talk about is my moniker here with Average Joe Finances is beat debt, build your wealth, and control your future. Right.
Mm.
And that's always the focus. And whether or not you come from a wealthy background or not, there's always going to be something hanging over your head that you have to deal with or battle with. Right. So everybody has their own quote unquote demons. Right. So yes, I just want to say thank you for that because it's fantastic. Okay, back to the semi-retired piece. So that gets you to a point where, you can make those choices or you have the freedom to walk away from something if you want to. There isn't a need for you to go out and try to earn more money, right? You're already at the point where you have this enough passive income that, you and your family are covered. And now you're at a point, and I'm curious about this as well, right? Because I have teenage daughters and eventually they will leave the home and so now with what you were going through and being on the verge of becoming an empty nester, which I'm not sure, has your son already graduated and left since
He's
then?
got like 2 weeks of school
Oh, wow.
left
Okay.
or
So this is it.
something.
This is it. So what are you doing to prepare for life after that? So now, because if he's moving out, it's just you and the hubby. Where does life go from there?
Yeah, it's really changing the way that even we think about our investing because
Right.
my husband's a general contractor. So we've been investing in real estate for 30 years and we've been very active investors. Up until a couple years ago, we sold a building and started putting money into deferred trusts and
Okay.
1031 exchanges and more passive options. And we really like them a lot, like a lot. We're like, wait, the check comes, and all we had to do was research and make sure it was a good investment for us. And then the check comes.
That's what I love about passive investing. It's wonderful.
Yes. So there's definitely a movement. And my husband was really scared because when you're used to like brick and mortar and seeing the house and knowing what it's going to do for you, he liked that. And so at first he was like, I don't get it. He had a lot of resistance. And then we did it and we've done it. And he's, oh, that's how this works. The tax benefits.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. But my point is that we're reevaluating so that we have freedom, that we know ourselves so well about if we're going to own the property, we take a really high standard. If we're running an Airbnb, we want to be 5-star. We want people saying this is the cleanest Airbnb we've ever stayed in. And that creates problems because we don't have the freedom. If we want to have that, then we have to give up this. And
Yeah. Now
so
you're tying yourself to something.
totally. And so we're spending the next couple years really getting clear of maybe it all looks very passive. We don't own the properties outright in just us. We actually invest in others who are investing for us and doing the work and allows us to have freedom. We have been very spoiled. We have lived in like some of the greatest places on the planet. And I don't think that's going to change. Hawaii, Lake Tahoe, Sedona. Like
You lived in Hawaii?
yeah,
What
in
part?
Hawaii. So we moved. We were thinking we were going to move there full time. We sold everything in Tahoe and put what we had left in storage. And we started in Maui for a
I
couple
love
months.
Maui.
And then we moved this like 2015. And then we moved to Kona and we were just trying to figure out where do we want to live. And after that experience of spending September to December, my husband's, I don't think I can do this full time. It's too far
Yeah.
away. He likes to hike. And there isn't actually a lot of public open land in Hawaii, which is shocking. On the Big Island, there's some, but we're talking, my husband likes the Sierras, like the
Oh, you
whole
guys
Sierras.
should have came over to Oahu. We have 300 hikes on that island. It's
Still
crazy.
not enough. He's
Oh,
already
wow.
done
Okay.
every hike in Sedona, like multiple
Wow.
times, hundreds
Okay.
and hundreds of hikes. Oh no. And he's bored in Sedona now. So we have to go places where there's like just millions of,
So
options.
do you think you guys might become nomadic in the future?
I don't.
Maybe hop in an RV and travel the US and because
Maybe.
I've debated that for a little while as well. That or like getting a sailboat and sailing around the world.
I know. I
So
totally dreamed about that, but you got a lot of learning you got to do
and
that.
not too many hikes out in the open ocean. So maybe a lot of swimming,
Yeah.
not so much hiking.
Yeah.
So
It's fun to imagine. Like, you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to think that you're just going to do this one thing. I think it's going to keep changing and we're going to keep
right.
learning what we like and don't like. And grandkids eventually will cause us to probably be closer to our kids
Yeah.
and we'll make choices because where they want to live. Thankfully, they're very spoiled and they just bought a house in
Nice.
South Lake Tahoe, so we can hang out there.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. One of the things that my wife and I also, our focus was that we want to be able to go wherever our kids are or wherever they wind up in life, that we can just go to them whenever we need to, right? We want them to go out and live their lives. We don't want them to feel like they have to live near us to take care of us, right?
Mhm.
I want them to know, hey, we're good. Wherever you wind up, we can come stay with you for a couple months and hang out with our grandkids or whatever. That's the way that we've pictured our future. And by setting that as the standard of what we were looking for, we said, okay, there is a point we have to reach to get this financial freedom, to get to that point where we actually have this true freedom that you talk about. And I believe financial freedom is that true freedom because to me, financial independence is actual freedom because I can go and do whatever I want to do and not have to worry about, am I going to have enough money to make it to the next, am I going to make it to the next paycheck or whatever? Getting yourself to that point where you can shift your focus now on life itself is huge.
Totally.
And now I want to talk about a little bit about this transition that you're going through now, right? So you're switching more now from being an active investor to more of a passive investor. Are you starting to focus solely on that? Do you think you'll eventually get rid of all of your investment portfolio, like all of your single family homes or anything like that, and just stick with these DSTs or multifamily or whatever else you're doing for passive?
I think that we know for the next couple years, for tax purposes, we will continue to keep the Airbnbs
Right.
and the way that we structured things. But looking out probably greater than 5 years, I'm going to guess that a significant portion will be in those investments that you're looking at making for 3 to 5 years. They're flipping, you're committed
Yep.
to them for that period of time. You are able to learn as you go of what's working and what's not. So I have a feeling that's going to happen. And then I'll also say I have this business that has been very successful. And now, similarly, like I'm taking all this content that people paid for before and bringing it to YouTube. Like I'm
Yeah.
looking at how can I take these things that people used to have to pay for and bring them to people for free. And it's that giving back because I think that if that's not happening, if I'm not able to take all of this stuff that has been created, like countless hours of teachings and all these things, and like putting them in a place where people can get access to them without necessarily having to make an investment, like that's a really big part of it. And what I've also seen is that when we do those sorts of actions, it's like, hey, how can I do this? It changes the whole vibration of the business that we're running and the people that we are better suited to serve, which are more like us versus maybe people who have a long way to go, they're going to be more served by the free content. But people who are going to really take what we've learned to the next level are the ones that start showing up. It's totally magical to me because I get excited. Like it's not even working when I help someone. Because one of the big things I've done is I'm able to identify in a very short amount of time what's that one thing that you have held on to that causes you to do things that you don't even realize are paradigm oriented. And I can help people drop that away in a matter of minutes. And it's a superpower that I've developed and I love to do it. But I'll be honest, it isn't something I can do with everyone. The people I like to help with that are the ones who are like, I have this big idea, but I can't bring it into creation because something's stopping me. But
Yeah.
I know that the potential is so big. And so by me showing up at that time and watching what happens where they drop away this story and then they start living into their greatest purpose, I'm actually able to be a participant in what they're about to do for the world.
Yeah.
And that's that leverage, that multiplier effect that I think changes the dynamic of who we are as a human.
Yeah, I love that. So you actually help a visionary take their vision and put it into action.
Yeah, by removing the
The
mental
barriers that are,
blocks
yeah,
and the trauma blocks. I'm not by any means I'm not a therapist. I definitely approach it from a more spiritual standpoint. But
sure.
the truth of our being is that we're abundant. But many of us have adopted a story that we're not. And if I can get to the bottom of why you're not living into that abundant way of being and show you it and invite you to let it go, because you don't want it anymore. But most of
Right.
the time, we just don't know what it is. And when we're invited to let something like that go, it's watch out.
Yeah, watch out, world. One of the things that you just said too, I wrote this question down, and I want to say this to my audience too, is what's the one thing that you hold on to? Ask yourself that question. What's the one thing that you hold on to that could be holding you back? And I think that's something we all need to ask ourselves. Lisa, this has been fantastic. I'd like to transition this now into something I call the final round. It's where I'll ask you the same 4 questions I ask everybody that comes on the show, but I'm going to keep it more business related for you instead of real estate related because we talk about real estate all the time, but you also, I want to focus more on your business. And I think this will add a little more value for my audience as well. So if you're ready to go, we'll get that party started.
Sure.
All right. So the first question I have for you, Lisa, is what is the biggest mistake you've ever made in business?
Thinking too small. And it's exactly what we were talking about before, playing to not lose rather than stepping into the opportunity in front of me. And sometimes that takes financial investment that you're not sure it's going to pay off. And I think that I have held back until that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I can see what's happening here.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Okay. So you'll see that this next question, Lisa, ties into that one. But what is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started this journey?
That mistakes are the most valuable part of life. That if you could put on your resume, expert in failing forward, you will have opened yourself up to a whole new world of possibility.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I can't even count on my fingers and toes how many failures I've had in life that those failures have helped propel me forward towards my success and towards my goals. And I think that's for those that are listening right now, one of the biggest things, one of the biggest takeaways here is you can't let failure define you. Or if you do, let it define your path towards success. I always tell people too that like each failure is another step on that ladder or that stairway to success. No, I absolutely love that answer. Okay. So Lisa, do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started out today?
In business or in investing?
I would say, we'll say in both, just as an entrepreneur, right? But somebody is at the point where they're ready to take those next steps.
No one is going to care about your money as much as you do. And that means that you do not abdicate responsibility for money or for money decisions, whether that be an advisor or a coach or whoever it is that you're getting mentorship from. you need to understand your relationship with money, and you need to see where you go abdicate or when you're full on. Here I am. I'm going to learn what's going on. I'm going to understand what's happening inside of myself, because I think that's where people get into trouble. And that's the
Right.
thing that can change. It's changed my life, and I think it can change
Yeah,
others.
I think that's huge. Thank you so much for that because even as a coach, right, I help coach people with their finances. I always tell them, look, ultimately, this is always going to be your responsibility. You can't pass it off on anyone else. So to say if you have a financial advisor or you have a coach and you can be like, yeah, everything's good because I have, or I'm using you right then and there are giving up all of your authority on your own finances. So as long as you are always willing to accept the decisions that you make with your finances are your decisions, not your financial advisors, not your coach. So I think that's huge. Thank you so much for that. Okay. And the final question of the final round, and I will preface this with besides your own, but do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate related book or podcast or both?
There's so many. The book that's coming to mind, it's so funny that I read so many and I get asked to like provide endorsements. My friend Joe Saul Sehi wrote a book recently with Emily Guy Birkin about money. Darn it, I can't remember the name of it, but it's really funny. And I really love when we can see the absurdity of money and how our relationship is playing out. So I love The Mindful Millionaire, but I also love that book because it pokes fun at it and it gives us a lighter perspective of something that's
Awesome.
actually really deep and can be quite troubling in our lives.
Okay. No, definitely appreciate that. Okay. So that is it for the final round. Now, I do have another question, and this is probably the most important question I'm going to ask you on this show because the conversation we've had, you've provided so much value, Lisa. Thank you so much. And my audience is like sitting here listening and saying, you know what? I want to know more about Lisa. I want to know more about the Mindful Millionaire. Where can I get the book? Where can I learn about her programs and everything that she's doing to help other people? So if you could share with us, where can people get your book for one? And then do you have a website you could share with us or any social media profiles that people can follow?
Sure. So The Mindful Millionaire is on Amazon, at Barnes and Noble. I often go to the bookstore and there it is. It's so cool, right next to Dave Ramsey. How funny, because we're very different in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
I think
But
most of us in this community are very different when it comes to their mindset on money, for
yeah,
sure.
totally. So thewealthclinic.com is where you can find out more about the programs that I offer, the fun and quirky things that I've learned. And then the mindfulmillionairebook.com also has my podcast. And I've interviewed hundreds of amazing people. Sometimes we talk about relationship with money, sometimes business, sometimes investing. It's a
Nice.
hodgepodge, but it's really fun and very insightful.
Yeah, and kind of like the way this podcast is too. It's a hodgepodge of just valuable information for my listeners. And so to my listeners, I just want to say Lisa is awesome. So go check out those links. I'm going to put them all in the show notes to make it easy for you guys to find. So you can just copy and paste or click away, but don't do it if you're driving, please. Okay. I don't want to be responsible for that. So Lisa, this has been fantastic. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Thank you so much for this time. It's been awesome. And I just want to encourage you, no matter where you're at on the journey, that anything is possible, because I think we're both examples of that. This wasn't a sure thing that we were going to go figure this whole thing with real estate investing or freedom out. But I just can't say enough about the fact that your self image, the way you think about yourself, how you feel as far as your confidence about who you are and what you can do in the world means everything. So go find a way to become more confident, and you can do this.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That was fantastic. Again, Lisa, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show. This was so valuable. This was amazing. And I also want to thank my audience. Thank you so much for joining me and our special guest, Leisa Peterson, on the Average Joe Finances podcast. Go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about today's episode with Lisa. Normally, I would say aloha from Hawaii, but today we're live in Phoenix at RootCon 23. And again, I want to thank Podcast Abundance for putting this whole setup for us together. This has been fantastic. So aloha from Phoenix and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.